Mhm. There we go. All right, we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a surprise live stream. The second out of three we'll have today. This one, though, we are talking straight NFL. So hopefully your job isn't that important that you can just jerk off with us at 2 o'clock Pacific or Eastern time. I'm Chris Spags, joined by my good friend, the Chubster, Josh Engelman. Josh, are you ready to talk some NFL wide receiver based football?
I wish you would have sang that to me, like the song. Are you ready for some wide receiver based football? A
We had our
Friday night
first football
party.
game yesterday. We're ready. I feel like I'm more ready than I was before because I actually got to see some guys hit a lot of flags yesterday, a lot of terrible tackles that seemed right that got penalized. So shaping up to be a fun NFL season ahead of us.
Man, sorry I missed that. What sounds like amazing football game to watch. I looked through some of that box score. Oh boy, I'm sorry. I didn't tune into that one. I really wish that I could have seen. Hold on. I obviously don't remember the name at this point because why would I? Was the gentleman? No, I'm sorry that I didn't get to see Josh Woodrum go 6 for 6 for the Ravens. Or I'd like to see Tyler Bray complete 51% of his passes. That's a great job for the Bears.
It was so the things to take away were the Bears offense in the beginning looked pretty explosive. They did some interesting things. I'm looking for signs of positivity. I thought it was weird though. Like if you have Mitch Trubisky and you have like a new offense, I get you don't want to play the ones that early, but maybe play that guy. Play him a little bit.
Or
I don't
maybe
know.
like how are we gonna? I can't wait to talk about Gus Edwards leading the Ravens with 23 receiving yards yesterday. It sounds like a really early pick for me.
I think he was a running back. I think who I thought was Alex Collins for a second, but was not. I believe that's who Gus Edwards is. He
Uh,
probably won't be on
he
the team.
definitely had 10 carries, and then second
Okay,
on the team was Lamar Jackson because of course. Blech.
there we go.
People that watch, if you
He was
watch this whole game, I am so sorry for you.
I did watch the whole game actually.
Oh
I was watching
God,
baseball and then I was like football and I got very into it and just watched the whole thing.
I
Hey, gotta get the fix.
I wouldn't watch that game if there was $100 in it for me at the end.
Well, there isn't, but there will be money at the end of the rainbow for you guys if you are watching this video either live or after the fact. Chat, we are paying attention to you as well. Probably a little less so than we are during the usual live streams because we have so much to burn through. So let's just get into it. We're going to go team by team in alphabetical order, same as always. This is chapter 4. If you missed it, we did an offseason review, a quarterback review, a running back review, and now we're on to wide receivers. And I will give you the teams, the relevant stats, the depth chart, and which guys actually have Vegas odds for leading the NFL in receiving yards this year. So let's go with the Cardinals. The relevant wide receivers in place are Larry Fitzgerald, who has plus 6,600 yards or odds to lead the NFL in receiving yards, Chad Williams, Christian Kirk, and Bryce Butler. They have a new offensive coordinator with Mike McCoy. We've talked about a few times here. He was pretty terrible as the offensive coordinator before he got fired in Denver last year. He just had 5.9 yards per attempt in that offense, which was pretty dismal for them, especially given that they had Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas there. Before that, though, a reputation as a passing game guru. He led the Chargers to an 8th-ranked passing offense in 2016 and the Broncos to a 2nd-ranked passing attack back in 2012 when he was the offensive coordinator there. Actually would help him get his job. So there may be some more hope here than he showed in Denver last year with the terrible quarterbacks they had. Larry Fitzgerald being on the board looks good. He also was 8th in the league in targets last year, in target share rather, getting 27% of the Cardinals' targets. The rest of the team has been changed over. Gone are the John and Jerron Brown folks. I think there's another receiver there who was important last year who's also gone, who's escaping me right now. Replacing them are going to be Chad Williams in his 2nd year, Christian Kirk, the rookie, and Bryce Butler, who is the one guy who has a track record to speak of. Last year, he was actually pretty decent. He got 17.4 air yards per target. Basically, the amount of air yards that a ball travels is a good indicator of a guy's success if he picks up more targets. At only a 5% target share on the year. So any increase in opportunity for Bryce Butler might be very good. Besides that, though, I don't mind Larry Fitzgerald. I think he's still going to get targets. He's still going to be useful. Any love for any of the guys in Arizona, Josh?
Not especially. Fitzgerald's fine, but he's not a number one anymore. It's just kind of like an unappealing group of wide receivers. They need some help there. Maybe that's Christian Kirk. I doubt it. like obviously Fitzgerald's the best wide receiver on the team. Is David Johnson the second best? Probably.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Butler was fine in a small sample last year. Honestly, like everything, the only thing that matters really is David Johnson staying on the field. But this is one of the more like unappealing wide receiver crops in the league for me. And this is coming from someone that's a very big Larry Fitzgerald fan.
I think you can keep Larry in the mix this year. He was 7th in the league in red zone targets last year. I mean, he still has use, I think. Probably not an elite week-to-week play, and it depends where you can get him in a draft or in DFS. But I don't mind him. And Christian Kirk, I think, is one to watch. His spark profile does compare to Stephon Diggs pretty favorably. I think it could be interesting, and it sort of depends on how this offense shakes out. But, I don't think it's a great opportunity, but I think something's going to come out of this, and I think it's going to be something besides Larry.
They were 27th rather last year in passing offense. I don't see anything that's going to make it like demonstrably better than that. So I would say they're a bottom 10 group of wideouts. Is that a crazy statement?
So no, I think that's fair. You want to do buy or sell again? I would sell the overall group, even though I would buy Larry.
Yeah, I would. I'm selling here wholeheartedly.
On to the Atlanta Falcons. Relevant wide receivers are Julio Jones with plus 500 odds to lead the NFL in receiving, Mohamed Sanu, and rookie Calvin Ridley. Julio Jones' odds represent a 16.7% implied probability to lead the league in receiving yards, which is a pretty nice boost for Falcons fans who were probably worried about him being in camp. But he did solve that one, found the middle ground, even though he had 3 years left on his deal. But he will be in camp on time. Jones was 3rd in the league in target share last year. He got 27.9% of the targets for Atlanta's offense. It'd be nice to see him be more effective in the red zone. He actually only got 1.2 red zone targets per game last year, which is just 11th in the league. And he only turned 5.3% of his red zone catches into a touchdown, which is by far the worst among top receivers. They need to do a better job getting him into space. They need to do a better job using his athletic ability. But obviously, he's still Julio Jones, still going to get a ton of targets. Looks good in that respect. Sanu and Ridley, to me, more of just a stream or DFS play. There are 50 targets that Taylor Gabriel's departure leaves behind, and I think Ridley and Sanu could maybe pick up more value by proxy there. But for me, it's Julio Jones, and I would buy him enough to buy the whole core.
I'm buying for sure. I couldn't buy them hard enough. Love Julio Jones. He was 7th in DER last year on Football Outsiders. Sanu was, just so I make sure I'm not missing it, 18th. So that's 2 top 20 wideouts, and they're adding Calvin Ridley. Just a lot of weapons for Matt Ryan. It would shock me if this offense wasn't one of the top offenses in the league.
Yeah, I think Julio's about as safe of a play as you'll get. So I'm with you on that. And yeah, I think we're both buying. No more needs to be said. Baltimore Ravens, relevant wide receivers are Michael Crabtree, who has plus 8,000 odds to lead the NFL in receiving. We also have John Brown, Willie Snead, basically an entirely new core there. Reports so far to Baltimore, which we did not see in the Hall of Fame game because, God forbid, you play Joe Flacco at all. Got to keep that one close to your vest. But apparently he's been throwing the ball better in training camp than he ever has. And if the media is reporting that, it means it's very true and not at all bullshit. But there are enough reports out there which make you think that Flacco is playing for his job, and he's sort of said the same. There'll be a link in the article companion which backs that out. Success or failure of the group, though, is going to depend upon Baltimore doing better than their 37 in the league, 5.3 yards per pass attempt last year. They just have to get better there, and I think they will. Crabtree is going to be the biggest beneficiary, but he only caught 57% of the balls thrown his way last year, which is pretty bad for a number 1 wide receiver. John Brown is even worse, catching only 38.2 of the balls thrown his way. You want to blame Carson Palmer and his deep ball accuracy, you probably can. And Brown's been getting better reviews in camp as well, but, again, that catch rate is terrible. Snead also only caught 50% of the balls thrown his way by Drew Brees, who was the quarterback who led the league in accuracy. So there's some issues here. I think Flacco's going to have to be more accurate than he realizes. I think he can be. And I think maybe there'll be some under the radar, value here. But just based on what I see and just the numbers from last year, I'm selling the entire group.
Hard sell. One of my least favorite groups of wide receivers. At least Arizona has Fitzgerald. Every one of these wide receivers for Baltimore is masquerading as a better version of what they should be. Crabtree's not a 1, he's a 2. Snead's not a 2, he's a whatever number you want to pick. Same for John Brown. They were all below average wide receivers in the receiving metrics on Football Outsiders last year. I don't see them being like, I don't see the whole being better than the sum of the parts, or whatever that stupid phrase is that just rolled off my tongue incredibly poorly. Big time pass here. I don't see Flacco making it through the season. Give the job to RG3 at this point. Yeah, I said it. Fuck Lamar Jackson.
RG3.
Team RG3 for life.
He looked good in limited action last night, which you would have seen if you just indulged your preseason football needs.
I just go back and watch 2014 videos of him on the Redskins. I hope I picked the right year. I have no idea.
Buffalo Bills relevant wide receivers are Kelvin Benjamin, Jeremy Curley, and Zay Jones. None of whom have odds to lead the league in rushing. Big surprise there.
Well, yeah, no shit. They're receivers.
They barely qualify as receivers on any sort of statistical site. New offensive coordinator working with AJ McCarron and rookie Josh Allen. Brian DeBall comes from Bama, expected to have a run-heavy offense with some tight end involvement. None of these guys really seem interesting to me. Benjamin wasn't that good last year in limited action. Jones was even worse, catching just 37% of the passes thrown his way. The Bills may actually use Jeremy Curley a little more effectively. He catches 81.5% of the balls thrown at him and runs a pretty short route tree. So he may have some PPR value because they're a risk-averse team. But obviously this is a sell. I mean, even if Jeremy Curley is way more useful than I'm giving him credit for, all these guys are not going to get the ball. So that's a big sell for me.
Yeah, same for me here. Not like, I like Kelvin Benjamin. He's an above average wide receiver, but that's not going to play as a one, especially with AJ McCarron as your quarterback. I'm a Zay Jones fan just because he went to East Carolina, and that's close to where I live. And I know the sort of zest of an East Carolina Pirate. But, I mean, they're bad. Like, these guys are just bad. The whole team's bad. Kelvin Benjamin last year drew one defensive pass interference call for 5 yards. That's it. One.
That's crazy given that he's a deep ball receiver. You definitely need to get more than one.
Yeah, like Keenan Allen last year had 8 for 116 yards. DeAndre Hopkins, 11 for 155. 1 for 5 yards. Like you're not mixing it up at all. At all. No, nobody. You're not beating someone so bad that like they have to do it. 3 out of the first 4, just hard sell.
Yeah, it's not a great opening. I think there's stretches where it gets better, but it was pretty dark to start off. I think this next group is actually one where it does get better. Carolina Panthers relevant wide receivers are Devin Funchess, who has plus 6,600 odds to lead the NFL in receiving, Torrey Smith, and rookie DJ Moore. Devin Funchess was a guy who jumped out to me as being better than I realized. He had a target share of 22.2% last year. His 12.8 air yards per target pairs well with the 6.9 targets per game he gets. He's going to have to catch a little better. He only caught 57% of his balls last year, which is not where number one receiver should be. But, he did take over for Kelvin Benjamin mid-season, so I feel like that kind of excuses it a little bit. Smith only caught 53.7% of the balls thrown his way, which is excusable as a deep ball receiver, but he frankly doesn't have the speed to grade out that well. I would be more inclined to take a look at DJ Moore than Torrey Smith. He grades out with elite athleticism, a lot of hype behind him. Cam Newton should have a better completion percentage with North Turner as a new offensive coordinator. So I'm actually buying this group, but really buying Funchess and taking a flyer on DJ Moore.
Yeah, this is more of a hold for me. I like Funchess, but I don't know if he's 100% like a number one receiver. A lot of his value last year was in bulk, not necessarily in efficiency, which kind of scares me a bit. Maybe he could take a bit of a leap. Who knows? Everything sort of rides on DJ Moore here and sort of like the growth of McCaffrey out of the backfield. So I'm not super pessimistic. I like the weapons, but I don't like them traditionally. But I like the combination of McCaffrey, Olsen. I like having Funchess. I'm not a big Torrey Smith guy. So a lot of this hinges on DJ Moore. If he can be good, I think that he will drive a lot of positives for this offense. But otherwise, I think they're like a guy short.
I think the one thing with Funchess that jumps out to me as an opportunity is I think you would say a lot of the things that you said about Adam Thielen before last year. And obviously that was a different coordinator and Shermer kind of improved on Turner's offense. But the bones of the offense were North Turner's. And I think my hope would be that he can kind of use that to get Funchess into space more and get him the same looks that like Diggs and Thielen did. So that would be my hope for it. But I can see what you're saying with Funchess, and I think a hold may be a more productive play. I was just so surprised by Funchess. Like I thought he was much worse. So whenever that comes out, I'm like, oh, you actually were pretty good. I feel like I end up liking the player too much.
Yeah, he's like a 1.5 for me, if that makes any sense.
Like in terms of your erection size?
Yes. Yeah, 1.5 feet around.
To be honest, I really wasn't sure where you're going, but it makes sense now that I thought about it.
Yeah, no. Like I don't think that he's good enough to like anchor a wide receiving crew and like take away, like have people's eyes focus on him from a defensive standpoint. But I think that he can get there. I do like him. So it's a hold. I've seen more of Funchess than I've seen, most of these guys from living in North Carolina. The Panthers are on every week. So they are a team that I see more often than any other team in football.
Okay, so fine. So you're right then. I guess that's all it is. Josh has seen more, so never mind. Hold it is. Chicago Bears relevant wide receivers are Allen Robinson plus 6,600 odds to lead the NFL in receiving. Kevin White is still involved. Taylor Gabriel is a new signing, and rookie Anthony Miller, who's probably going to take Kevin White's job the first opportunity he gets. They have a new coach in Matt Nagy, a new coordinator, Mark Helfrich. If you watch the game at all, that first drive in particular, you kind of got a taste of what they're trying to do. A lot of trickery, a lot of misdirection. And it worked pretty well for the first preseason game involving 2s and 3s. So I don't know. Seems like it's really going to turn around for Mitch Trubisky this year. I think overall you need to see Trubisky air it out more. He only had 7.7 air yards per attempt last year, which is not that great. Overall, I think you need to see Allen Robinson obviously be healthy. It hurts. I'm probably going to sell the group. I still like the running back group. I don't trust a wide receiver core. And I think if you get Allen Robinson for cheap, maybe. If you get Anthony Miller for cheap, maybe. But besides that, fuck. I'm going to hold. I'll hold, but it's not an optimistic hold.
Light them on fire. Sell. Hard sell. It's the Bears. If we had like a production team that did this and it wasn't just me, I'd go back and put in all of the crap that I talked about Trubisky on the first one and Jordan Howard on the second one. Look, Allen Robinson's not a number one wide receiver. I'm sorry. Taylor Gabriel is, I don't know. I hate the Bears. They're terrible. Who's the quarterback of the Bears in 2 years? Because it's not Mitch Trubisky.
I think it could end up being Trubisky. I don't know. I feel like they're pretty motivated with him. And from what I've heard, I do know a guy who I used to work with at Barstool who is very close friends with him. And he was a big fan of him in general as a human being. And I think, that's enough for me. It's enough for me to go with him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you get extra points because he smiles at the lunch lady in the cafeteria. So
perhaps. The one thing I would say, though, I based on what I saw yesterday, I would wager a fair amount that Taylor Gabriel is in at least one millionaire maker lineup that wins this year, because he's going to have those like 250-yard bombs in a game one time. Because like they're all about diversions and all about getting guys into space, using trickery and using the run pass option. And I think that's sort of one guy I would target, or at least be aware of as a guy you might want to stream sometimes, depending on the matchups.
Jeremy Browning. Robinson was close to a wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville. Feel Trubisky will hold him back. That is an understatement.
So you think Trubisky's a worse quarterback than Blake Bortles?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I need to see Trubisky be worse first. I need his second year. I want to see him be bad. I think he's still got a chance. That's why I'm a hold for me. If he's bad this year and he comes out and he doesn't learn and didn't grow enough, but like Chase Daniel, I mean, granted, he's had a rep for a while as being a career backup guy who's reliable, but he looked good last night in the first preseason game of the year. But they did a good job creating movement where I think it'll help Trubisky as long as he can kind of adjust with the offense and be smart enough. And I think that's actually a strength. It's just he's like pretty smart.
Like Rob, I'm not a big Robinson fan.
Okay, I don't mind Robinson. So Jeremy, I'm more with you than I am with Josh. But still a hold though. Still a hold.
Full sell. I am lighting these first couple of teams on fire. Oh my god.
I'm sure there's going to be a run where you're buying again. Maybe this one, Cincinnati Bengals relevant wide receivers are AJ Green, who currently has plus 1,600 odds to lead the NFL in receiving. They also have Brandon LaFell and John Ross after his lost year last year, rookie year rather. AJ Green's opportunity was still there despite Cincinnati being terrible. He was second in the league in target share with 28% of his team's targets. He only grabbed 4.4 red zone targets out of the one he got for him. So probably a bit of a symptom of the offense just sucking and some attention on him. But he did get 8 touchdowns despite that. So again, AJ Green still score, still do whatever despite the offense mostly being dog shit. Brandon LaFell was also a decent number 2 receiver. He had a 17.5% target share, which would be right in line with some more successful guys like Stephon Diggs and Rashard Matthews. LaFell's not going to get deep red zone looks or air yards to be that useful, but I think he's a guy you can consider for DFS or as a streaming play for season long. And John Ross, we just need to see him do something. I think if he's the poorest man's version of Will Fuller, then that would be a great win for him in Cincinnati. I need to see it, though, so I wouldn't go crazy on John Ross. And we probably are still overhyping him because he's so fast. But AJ Green is strong enough here for me to give this group a bye.
Yeah, AJ Green was sneaky not awesome last year. Obviously he was there from a volume perspective, but it's kind of a rough year. And I don't know if that's him or this stagnant-ass offense or Dalton, or I don't really know specifically what the problem is. But there's so much more talent in AJ Green than what we saw in 2017. I assume that he could take a step forward. If Eifert can stay on the field, that will help him tremendously. I'm a big believer in John Ross. I think that he fits where the NFL game is going in the future. So I'm cautiously buying this, but there are a lot of signs that point me in the wrong direction. I will say this much. I liked Tyler Boyd from an efficiency standpoint last year. So it's there. If they can get something out of Ross, there's like a potentially above average offense here.
Yeah, I agree. And we've talked about it in the previous editions that there seems like there may be some regression back to a less terrible mean for them to do. Sort of depends on the ability to tune out or not tune out Marvin Lewis. And I think we'll find out that answer pretty fast this season for the Bengals. And, Joe Mixon may help too. Being another year as a bell cow back obviously helps to distract some attention. So, yeah, I think I'm okay with a bye and probably a little more confident in it than you are. Just a lot of volume.
Yeah.
Cleveland Browns, relevant wide receivers are Jarvis Landry, who has plus 10,000 odds to lead the NFL in receiving. Josh Gordon, who has much higher plus 30, the pun unintended, plus 3,300 odds to lead the NFL in receiving. And Corey Coleman. Jarvis Landry thinks that Cleveland can be a Super Bowl team who puts up 40 points a game. It's a lofty goal. But actually, the Browns offense, to me, looks pretty logical. Landry was really good in the slot last year, picked up a third best 161 targets. 26.7% target share in Miami. And he also was surprisingly 4th best in the league with 1.44 red zone targets per game. And that's all despite Miami being the 27th worst team in the league with 5.9 yards per pass attempt. So again, there wasn't a lot there to get defenses off of him, and he still did his job. I think Josh Gordon's going to help clear space for him. His air yards per game are air yards per target rather, 16.1 yards. So what you're going to see is Gordon over the top and Landry underneath. And I think overall that's a mix which could be good for both those guys, especially with Tyrod Taylor not turning the ball over quite as much. Baker Mayfield had the lowest amount of turnovers in the NCAA last year. So out of rookies, he's probably the guy who's most equipped to step in and not screw up an offense too much. And lastly, Corey Coleman can get downfield a little bit, 13.5 air yards per game in his 9 games, per target in his 9 games last year. To me, I think he's going to lose some looks, Corey Coleman will, but it probably will be in a better offense. So Corey Coleman's probably going to have use more than he had last year. But I actually like Jarvis Landry and Josh Gordon a lot, especially depending upon where you can get Landry and Gordon. I'm buying this group, and probably my most enthusiastic buy besides Julio Jones and the Falcons. Thus far.
I'm going to go ahead and sell here. I hate Landry. I mean, if I'm playing in a PPR league, I'm in for like a bunch of Landry, but he's not very good. He's certainly not a number 1 receiver. I mean, Josh Gordon could be, but at some point in time, he's going to not be what everybody thinks he is when he's actually on the field. He was a number 1 wide receiver 5 years ago. Let's see where that goes. Corey Coleman's bad. This isn't for me. They're obviously better than they were last year because hard to be worse. Having Taylor and Hyde, Chubb, even just having Landry, it's going to make them a functionally better offense, but they're far from good. They're still a bottom 10 offense to me.
I just think that Landry was so good in a way that I wasn't prepared for, to see that if you're signing him, you obviously know what he's going to do. I mean, this is assuming a degree of competency from the Browns, so that might be a much to ask. But I like Jarvis Landry and the compliment. To me, the thing that I really looked forward with this, after seeing also like that it kind of worked that way last year for a lot of teams, is if you have the guy getting a pretty good short range game and you have a guy who's getting a better over the top game, it just is going to make it easier to get those guys in position to succeed. So I think for me, that's why I'm comfortable with those guys. And it is the Browns, so there's a degree of risk, but I think if you're looking for an undervalued team, because everybody's going to think, oh, the Browns suck, they can't do it, they can't turn it around. It's not the same team this year, and I think that's what I would bank on. So I'm buying. Big old buy.
All right, over under 3.5 games for Josh Gordon.
Over. He's doing his treatment plan now. He's feeling good.
Okay, hold on. We got to do this. 2017, 5 games. Didn't play in 16 or 15, and played 5 games in 2014. So
5 games.
We're confident. We're confident here. Hasn't played more than 5 games since 2013.
I think he's turned his life around. I'm all in on him.
Look, I hope he's great. I am not confident.
Look, I had him last year in fantasy and season-long fantasy. I played him in DFS too. A few too many people played him in DFS because everybody loves Josh Gordon. But I don't know. I trust the guy. When I talk about Gordon, he's going to smoke weed. Hey, you know what? If he does, I hope he doesn't get caught. But I want to believe he's learned. And if he has learned, I think he and Landry are going to be a dynamic duo. And we can all look back on this video and be like, thanks for teaching me that, Chris. What a hero you are.
Yeah.
That's what people do, right?
I'm going to go ahead and sell pretty aggressively.
I don't want to know what you're going to say about our next group, but I'm probably going to be positive about it. The Dallas Cowboys, relevant wide receivers are Allen Hurns, Terrence Williams, Deontay Thompson, rookie Michael Gallup, Tavon Austin, and Cole Beasley. I've done a lot of talk about the Cowboys needing more from Ezekiel Elliott in the passing game. There's going to be a link to this article as well in there talking about that at more depth. But there is also a pretty strong case for the group in Dallas, at least being able to kind of as a unit fill in for losing Dez Bryant and generally not having an elite wide receiver at number 1. Allen Hurns, to me, was very underrated in Jacksonville. He caught 69.6% of the balls thrown his way, which was compared to 50 and 60% for everybody else on that Jaguars wide receiving core. So Hurns was somehow the Bortles whisperer, and I think for me, that kind of makes me like him the most out of this group. Dez Bryant's leaving behind a 27% target share, so Hurns getting that and catching balls at that rate from what is theoretically a better quarterback in Dak, I think is interesting, as well as the 1.25 red zone targets per game that Dez is going to leave behind, which Dez was not very efficient with at all. Hurns could, in theory, be a little more productive with that. Terrence Williams should also get some more snaps. Deontay Thompson is more of a deep guy, so not somebody I would bank on, but he gets 14.6 air yards per target, which could be useful for streaming and for DFS purposes. Michael Gallup, we don't know enough about. It actually stands to reason that he could also steal some of those snaps that Dez Bryant had, so that's something to watch in training camp and preseason. If he gets the opportunity over Hurns, then he would obviously shoot up the rankings for me. And Cole Beasley and Tavon Austin are going to work the underneath routes and do what they do on a PPR level. Cole Beasley, I would think, if he holds off Austin, should take some of those Jason Witten touches as well that he would get over the middle of the valve. So I'm buying this group. Lots of ways to use them, lots of ways to deploy them, and the potential for one person taking Dez's targets and being more useful with them, I think, is pretty high. So I'm going to buy him and put a hold on which guy it'll be. I think it's Hurns, but there's a chance it's Gallup. There's a chance it's Terrence Williams, which is not something as a Cowboys fan I really believe, but a buy overall.
I'm gonna hold, which I think is about as optimistic as I can be. Unrelated
I'll
note,
take
your audio is so bad.
Is it?
Yeah, I have no idea why. Real crunchy. I think it's more internet connection than anything else, but we're pot committed to this at this point. So
I have fucking 500 megabyte internet, and you have fast internet. This is so annoying about live streaming.
Oddly enough, that just sounded significantly better.
Because I complimented my internet.
Yeah, maybe.
It's like, oh, this guy.
Yeah, you've been creaky. Anyway, not important. I mean, I could be too. I have no idea. Yeah. Look, Hearns was really good last year. Much to my dismay, I've never been much of an Alan Hearns guy, but he graded out really well. 9th overall in DVOA for receivers. That's big time.
I did not know that. That makes me feel good about my stats.
Yeah, like I think they can be fine. I probably wasn't giving him enough credit when we talked about the Cowboys earlier. I'm not super into everyone else. Like, I'm not a big Tavon Austin guy. I don't really think anybody is at this point. I don't think Thompson's anything special. He's probably got a lot of dudes. Yeah, hold is fine for me. It's all Dak. The same thing I've said in most of these. If Dak stays on the field, they're fine. If they don't, they're dead in the water. It doesn't matter who else is on this team.
Yeah, I think from a season-long perspective, there is some value to me in getting Hearns right now. I don't know his ADP offhand, but I know he's undervalued, and I'm definitely keeping a close eye on him after these stats. I was surprised. He was one of those guys. I'll point all these guys out as we see them, but he was one of those guys who I was like, "Wow, you were actually really good," and it was kind of surprising, especially relative to the rest of the team. Like, I didn't think he was that much more talented than Marquise Lee or Robinson in his limited sample size, and or even Dede Westbrook and Keelan Cole, and he was substantially better than those guys. So I don't know, something to watch.
Only 2 touchdowns last year is a little weird. You'd like to see that rebound. I think that's more fluke than anything else.
Yeah, right. That, and I mean, if he gets those Dez red zone targets, I would think he'll do a better job with them than Dez did last year. So we'll find out. But
you know who should get those Dez red zone targets? Dez.
No, Dez is flamed out of everywhere. There's a reason nobody's signing him. I think that's become clear. His talent's still enough where he should be in the league, but he's not going to get a job until like somebody gets hurt in training camp or preseason.
Oh, for sure.
Denver Broncos relevant wide receivers are Demaryius Thomas, who has plus 4,500 odds to lead the NFL in receiving. Emmanuel Sanders has plus 10,000 odds to lead the NFL in receiving. Everybody else who really cares. New quarterback is Case Keenum, obviously in town. We've talked about him in the previous chapters. New offensive coordinator as well, Bill Musgrave, who took over late in the year for Mike McCoy, we discussed earlier in his firing. Case Keenum was the second most accurate QB in the league in 2017. So that actually is a surprising one, a bit of a symptom of his wide receivers getting the ball. If you actually read this article in the Minnesota part, I have a tweet breaking down how Stephon Diggs bailed out so many bad Case Keenum throws, which I thought was pretty interesting. But still, second most accurate QB is going to be an improvement upon what the Broncos had last year. I think the volume may not be there for the Broncos if they commit to the run as much as they did. But to me, Sanders and Thomas grade out similarly well. A slight edge for Thomas. He gets about 1.1 more targets per game than Sanders does. He also has a better catch rate and more red zone targets and size. So, I mean, all the things really favor Thomas, but I think both Thomas and Sanders have value. I'm buying this group.
I'm selling here, although they should be better than they were last year. Thomas was just barely above average. Sanders had a really rough season. Negative 18.2 DVOA, 75th among guys that caught 50 balls last year. There were only 86 of those, so for reference sake. They should be better because of Keenum. But like, I have a hard time seeing this Denver offense being anything of value. Let's see, where did they finish? They were 31st last year in passing. I mean, even if they got to 20th, which would be a gigantic leap, that's still a below average offense. I have a hard time seeing them jump all the way to 15th or higher. So I'm lightly selling. It would take a really big rebound year. We would need the Demaryius Thomas of 24 months ago.
See, I think there's enough factors to me that are benefiting them. I mean, things that we've talked about in the previous chapters, especially like if Royce Freeman wins the starting job, I think that his ability as a runner can help clear room for the receivers. And it's just better players around them than there were last year. I mean, like, who was throwing the ball? Simeon, Paxton Lynch. There was like a third QB in there who was also terrible, I feel like, at some point.
John Elway.
They wish John Elway were throwing him from like the offensive coordinator booth. He'd probably still do a better job. I don't know. I think there's enough positive signs there where Thomas and Sanders can be useful, and they're going to get the volume, and that's sort of what I care about. It's always going to be a volume play for me.
Sure. Yeah. Look, again, Keenum is going to has to make a big difference here. I just don't think it's going to be big enough.
All right, let's Zani, let's try to pick up speed a little bit so we can get through this and not have you guys right until live before lock. Detroit Lions, the relevant wide receivers are Golden State, plus 5,000 odds to lead the NFL in receiving. Marvin Jones was plus 10,000 odds to lead the NFL in receiving, and Kenny Golladay. Matt Stafford is not quite the freewheeling dude he was in the past. Detroit was still 7th in the league in yards per pass attempt in 2017, picking up 7.3 yards per dropback. Both Golden Tate and Marvin Jones were effective. Tate caught 77% of his targets at a 21% target share. Jones caught a less impressive 57% of his targets, but a 19% target share. And Jones was more of a deep ball threat, catching the ball at 15.2 air yards compared to 6 air yards for Golden Tate. So to me, again, the mesh of routes here probably what worked for them last year. Obviously, it's going to be there again. Coordinator still in place, Jim Bob Cooter. Coach Matt Patricia probably going to want to keep the ball a little closer to the vest, but I think it's only going to help Stafford. I think that he's going to be more efficient this year. And I like both Tate and Jones, even though there may not be the volume for them to both be great every week like there was last year. I am actually going to buy both those gentlemen.
Huge buy for me. You ready for this? Golden Tate last year, above average. He had a 9.7% DVOA. It was in the top 30. He was 16th overall in DER. Marvin Jones, number 3 overall in DVOA among everyone that caught 50 balls or more. Even better, Golladay, in the guys that caught 10 to 49 balls, 2nd. I love this wide receiving core. Couldn't be buying anymore. Fat Matt Stafford, I love you. You're the best. Everybody was great last year, and they brought them all back. I don't blame them. It's a great receiving core.
Huh. Yeah, I didn't know that about Golladay, but that does kind of make sense with the stats as well. Yeah, I like them all. I think they look great, and I think they're good complements to each other. So I'm with you. It's a buy. Green Bay Packers relevant wide receivers are Devontae Adams, plus 3,000 odds to lead the NFL in receiving. Randall Cobb and Geronimo Allison. We talked a bunch in the previous chapters about the return of Joe Philbin to Green Bay. Last time he was the offensive coordinator there, it got him the job in Miami. But they also were the first-ranked passing offense, and everything Vegas-wise has backed up his chance to do that again this year. I talked about this on one of the live streams this week, but Devontae Adams jumped off the page as another player who was great, and that was with really inferior QB play last year with Brett Hundley at the position for most of the year. Jordy Nelson's departure is going to leave up 15.7% of the targets available, which to me means Adams is going to get more than the 21% target share he had last year, which only benefits given that Aaron Rodgers is the leading MVP candidate, and everybody seems to think is going to have a great year. So I think that helps Adams out. Adams was also tops in the league in red zone targets last year, 1.64 per game, and he caught 63.2% of the balls thrown his way, and that was with Brett Hundley, not Aaron Rodgers. So Adams, to me, grades out as one of the guys who has a pretty big opportunity in front of him and a chance to really take a leap into that top 5 wide receiver group. Randall Cobb's also going to be fine. He's an underneath guy. I think kind of fits as well with what the route tree that Adams has. And Geronimo Allison kind of does the same thing as Cobb, an underneath guy who's middling value. I think it's Adams here, and I think Adams is a strong buy. And Cobb's also probably a light buy. So buy.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to hold here. And it's mostly because I just trust Aaron Rodgers to get it done, which is a weird way to evaluate wide receivers. But I don't think that Adams was all that good last year, but he also had Hundley for half the season. So how great could you be? I'm hoping that Jimmy Graham can find the fountain of youth a little bit and sort of open things up a little bit more for Adams, Cobb, or Allison. But I'm not a huge fan of those guys. I think they're a bit overextended. Yeah, a hold is the best that I can do there. I wouldn't sell them because I think they'll be fine. But I don't see a ton of awesomeness coming out of them.
I think Adams is going to have a good year. I mean, to me, the fact that he put up such great numbers with Brett Hundley, and he's also going to the loss of Jordy Nelson. Jordy Nelson was a safety blanket, and I think that's going to become Adams. And he may even get some more deep ball routes that Jordy had. So I find it hard to fade Adams, and I think he was one of the guys who jumped out. So only if Danica keeps Aaron Rodgers happy, James, you are correct. He does have to satisfy her, or she has to satisfy him as his beard.
Wait, hold on. He's with Danica Patrick?
Yeah, now he is.
Man, that dude's doing great.
I think a lot of it. I think it's interesting that his 2 women are Olivia Munn and who needed some sort of a little bit of a PR boost, perhaps, and Danica Patrick, who also needed perhaps a bit of a PR boost. Just something to note.
Good for him, man.
Hey, who knows? Who knows? That's the whole thing with that family is weird, I think. But I guess this is not relevant to the conversation.
That's true.
I
know where you're going with it.
Okay, you know what I'm putting down. Look, I don't care, but I just think it's interesting. It's just interesting. Houston Texans relevant wide receivers are DeAndre Hopkins, who has plus 950 odds to lead the NFL in receiving. Will Fuller as well as there, and Sammy Coates is a new signing who is going to come in and is expected to win the slot role. He's competing with Bruce Ellington and Braxton Miller for the role. Hopkins led the league in target rate last year. 33% of his team's targets, the 174 passes thrown his way, were first in the league as well. Despite his having a really tremendous year, 1,378 yards, 13 TDs, he only caught 55% of the passes thrown his way. And Hopkins with an insane catch rate, I think that's more a symptom of having some shitty quarterbacks in the back half of the year than it is his fault. So I think it's actually feasible that Hopkins has a better year this year. Getting 16 games from Will Fuller would also be great. Fuller is a fantastic deep ball threat, 15.9 air yards per target. Not a great target share, but that number should improve with him getting a full season with Watson and also with the loss of C.J. Fedorowicz at tight end. Fuller is an explosive guy. I like him a lot. Sammy Coates is probably going to get a shot at the wide receiver 3 job. It's not a spot that I'm crazy about. Coates' catch rate is pretty okay, but Braxton Miller's was better. So I'd like to see Miller win the job, but I don't think he will. I think I'm buying Fuller, and I'm really buying Hopkins. So overall, that'd be a buy for this group.
Same page, man.
Same page.
Hopkins, top 10 guy for me. He was number 4 overall in DER. He was only 22nd in DVOA, but for when you're going to get that sort of volume and be such a factor, like the main guy, he's everything to that offense. He's that good. So I'm not surprised that in the bulk he was less efficient. It's like Russell Westbrook type shit for me. If we need an NBA comparison, love Will Fuller as a number 2. He was hyper efficient, really high DVOA, 12th overall last year among guys catching 50 balls. That's a 1-2 punch that I love. I think Lamar Miller is functional enough as a back. If Watson's knee holds up, I think Hopkins and Fuller have huge years. I'm buying tremendously here. It's all on Watson though, because it's not going to be great if it's Brandon Weeden.
I think it's interesting to note that Fuller and Marvin Jones are 2 guys who have had such high DVOAs. I mean, way higher than I would have expected. And I think that ties into the theory that I was saying before. Like, if you have a good guy underneath and a guy can go over the top at sort of a competent level, I think he's only going to get more efficient. So I think that's an interesting thing to note. Like, if you have a guy, like a team with one who has air yards that are underneath and a good catch rate, and another team who has air yards over the top and a good catch rate, then you're going to find some value. That's something which I hadn't thought of before. But
it's like an interesting triangle between those 2 things and like a competent quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. I think it makes sense too, because I like Miller. I mean, not Miller, Fuller a lot too. I like Miller too, but yeah, Fuller I agree with, and Jones. I think they both really jumped out. So yeah, but I'm glad we agree finally.
Yeah, that's the way that I played Madden too. I always wanted my routes to be like 4 very distinctly different routes of one guy coming underneath with another guy wrapping over the top, and same thing from the opposite side. I always wanted to have options in like all different spots, and I think that when you could have guys like Hopkins and Fuller to fill spaces like sort of unpredictably, because Hopkins can go really anywhere on the field and be the best guy on the field. So like that even gives Fuller more space just because of him being DeAndre Hopkins. I love that shit, man. Huge Hopkins buyer today.
Yeah, both those guys I think are really great. Indianapolis Colts relevant wide receiver T.Y. Hilton, who has plus 1,600 odds to lead the NFL in receiving, so pretty high for T.Y. Hilton. They also have new signing Ryan Grant, and Chester Rogers is expected to be the number 3 receiver. Let's see, so Hilton caught 52.3% of his targets last year, and that was without Andrew Luck. So one would assume it's going to be better this year, and that's probably why he has a 5.9% implied probability to lead the league in wide receiver yards. So I think that's interesting for T.Y. Hilton. He had a 22.4% target share last year, and that should only go up after Dante Moncrief left in free agency. And Andrew Luck, frankly, is just going to sling the ball more, and Hilton's a guy who will be available more often than not. So Hilton should be in a spot to improve upon last year. Ryan Grant's a guy who was much better than I realized as well. He caught 69.2% of his passes in Washington
Nice.
at a solid 9.7 air yards per target. So Ryan Grant, I had no clue was good, and I actually ended up leaving this research liking him a lot. So I am buying this group too. I feel like I've bought a few too many in a row, but I am buying Ryan Grant as a sneaky play. I'm buying T.Y. Hilton as another T.Y. Hilton year. I like both guys.
So I like Grant a ton. Got to see him play quite a bit last year. Big fan of him as a number 2, but Hilton's not a 1 any longer. He's masquerading in that spot, which is a shame. I think Luck needs another weapon. They were 30th last year in passing offense on Football Outsiders. Now, obviously, that is without Luck, but how much could that really jump with just basically like Ryan Grant being the deciding factor? It's not much for me. Like, I could see them being, 15th, 16th. Like the Panthers were 17th last year. I could see that leap from 30 to 17, but I don't think Luck can get him all the way there on his own, just because I don't think Hilton is that guy anymore. I'd like to see a big year out of Grant, though. I'm a fan.
Yeah, Jeremy's asking if Luck is healthy as Grant's a wide receiver 2. I think I would still probably, to be safe, file him as a wide receiver 3 for a fantasy football perspective, or a season-long fantasy football perspective. But I think the upside's there. And again, if you're catching that many passes with Kirk Cousins, I think Andrew Luck's going to help out both Hilton and Grant in a lot of ways. And I just think the volume's going to be there. Frank Reich as a new coach, I think is also going to help a lot. So I have those guys. That Philly offense was pretty aggressive last year, and I think if Luck has the same mentality as Wentz, which I think he's shown he does, I think that's why I would buy into Hilton more. It doesn't matter if Hilton's the same guys if he's getting balls thrown at him, 20 yards down the field.
Sure.
Wentz was, I think, I know this for a fact. He was the most aggressive QB in the league last year, and that might just be Wentz's philosophy, but I think that was in part a symptom of the offense. And Andrew Luck has shown he does love to throw the ball into tight spaces. So I think that is something to keep note of for these guys if you are kind of on the fence. The Jaguars' relevant wide receivers are Marquise Lee, Dante Moncrief, DJ Chark, who's a rookie, Dede Westbrook, and Keelan Cole. Marquise Lee resigned this year after Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns both left. Despite the knocks on Blake Bortles, there's going to be opportunity here. Lee had an 18.2% target share last year at 11.7 air yards per target, and that bodes well if he gets a couple extra targets from where he was last year, 6.9 targets per game. Dante Moncrief arrives from Indianapolis. Wouldn't be surprising to me if he didn't start this year. I just think Dede Westbrook, Keelan Cole, and DJ Chark are all looking better than him from what reports are so far in camp. I think they invested a little bit too much in him maybe to give up early, so that's the one thing. But the other guys look like better plays to me. Cole and Westbrook both had per target numbers in the area of 12 air yards per target and catch rates around 50%. But Cole got more of a target share. So if you're rating them, I would put Cole ahead of Westbrook. He also got 40% of the red zone catches that he made. He converted to touchdowns. And Chark is an interesting play. His spark profile compares to Robbie Anderson. So he could be a good complement to Marquise Lee and whoever comes out of this wide receiver group. I think Chark is a guy to watch. I think Lee is a guy to trust. Everybody else, I think I wouldn't want in a season-long perspective, and I wouldn't trust in a DFS perspective. So I'm going to go hold here, but I think there's upside for Lee and Chark in particular.
Ooh, okay. I'm selling here. I think they lost the best part of their offense in Hurns. I think Lee is not cut out for what they need him to do, but I'm a big Moncrief fan, which is probably the first time anyone's actually ever said that out loud. But I don't think that his addition is enough to offset. Like, they weren't a great offense last year, and Bortles is sort of like patching it together with duct tape. Man, is the Jags defense enough to make their wide receiver core better? Is that a weird thing to ask?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say there's a correlation per se, but I think when you just have the ball bouncing back and forth, that doesn't really, like, if the defense just keeps getting stops, I think that just gives more opportunity. It's like sort of like a stack in baseball. Like, I think you give your wide receivers more at bats. So maybe.
Yeah, I'm not in love with Marquise Lee. I don't think that he could, like, they're missing something. Maybe it's Safarian Jenkins. Maybe he just hauls in all sorts of balls in the red zone, and that's like the cure for what ails them. But they're missing a weapon here, and it's a shame because I'm about as big of a Fournette fan as you can get.
I think DJ Chark could be that weapon, but I obviously that's a rookie. You know, who knows? Can't trust a rookie receiver, especially. But it's got some burst.
The NFL, man. You can pick these teams out of a hat some years.
True. So I don't know. I would say keep an eye on Marquise Lee, and definitely keep an eye on DJ Chark. Those would be the two that I would advocate for. But yeah, I think your sell is fine. I'm still sticking with a hold. On to the Chiefs. Relevant wide receivers are Tyreek Hill, who has plus 5,000 odds to lead the NFL in receiving, and Sammy Watkins, who has plus 8,000 odds to lead the NFL in receiving. Tyreek Hill is an elite deep threat in a QB situation where Pat Mahomes has already shown that he has no fears airing it out. There's also a clip in the article version of this, which will be up after this video, where you could see just a sick deep ball where Mahomes didn't even move out of his like pocket position. He just stepped up and threw a 55-yard bomb, just looking really good. And Mahomes has had some issues, I guess, with turnovers in training camp, but I don't care. If he throws the ball deep, that's all I give a shit about. Hill had a target share of 19.3% in 2017 at 11.7 air yards per target. I think even if he loses volume, Mahomes is going to throw it deeper and more often, so I'm still okay with it. Sammy Watkins was actually pretty good in the red zone last year for the Rams. He converted his red zone catches into a touchdown 70% of the time, so that's actually pretty crazy. I didn't realize he actually had 8 touchdowns last year, 7 of which were in the red zone. So again, complementary skill sets, given that Tyreek does not go into the red zone. And Sammy Watkins has a reputation as a deep ball threat, but he was pretty good in the red zone. So something to note there. Yeah, I think I like this offense in general. I like Travis Kelce too. We'll talk about next week with tight ends. But I think this actually is now my favorite buy of all the groups, these two guys.
So I love Hill and Watkins. They were incredible last year. Hill, 8th in DER, 7th in DVOA. Watkins, 14th in DER, 6th in DVOA. That's some high-level shit. Those are two really, really, I mean, arguably the best two-man, like, obviously they weren't on the same team last year, but, I mean, statistically, like, that's the best two-man combination coming in from last year. I hope they complement each other. You know, Hunt West Ware. We need like a Transformers type name for those three, because it's going to be all three of them at some point. Hunt will get hurt. Everyone will pick up West or Ware on the waiver wire. That guy will get hurt that particular game. You'll pick up the next guy, and then Hunt will come back in like 3 weeks. I've played this game before with the Chiefs. It's really all on Mahomes. So, like, I'm buying the wide receiver core, but if Mahomes is just like a crappy version of Jeff George, then it might be a little tricky.
I think he's going to be good enough. I mean, obviously you can't go with preseason, but like you see all these viral clips of him just throwing beautiful deep balls, and like he's going to turn the ball over more than Alex Smith. But what are you going to do, man? I think that's only going to make the offense more explosive. And I think all the pieces can work. Like, honestly, like I think there's a situation where you can find here where it might be similar to New Orleans last year, where you can actually play Hill, Watkins, and Hunt and maybe get enough value out of all of them and stack them with Mahomes, and then it'll be like a fucking crazy DFS lineup that doesn't make sense, but does once the team is in action. So I like them all, and I trust Mahomes. Mahomes is going to be one of my top targets in my auction league, which with all my friends from high school.
I'm worried about Mahomes, man. I don't care that he's throwing the deep ball. I watched Kyle Bowler throw a ball from the 50-yard line on his knees through the goalpost, but his career sucked.
Yeah, no, you're right. I just think Mahomes is a swagger I look for in my quarterbacks, which again is a narrative piece, but I've seen enough. I want to believe in him. I think he's gonna have rocky moments here and there, but there's so much talent around him where he just has to let him make plays, and I think he can do that.
For 2018, I think they're really going to miss Alex Smith. I think it's a weird time to make that move for a team that. What are their Super Bowl odds?
I don't know.
I think that's sort of relevant, because I might be just talking out of my ass if they're not even close. I'm getting there. Chiefs are plus 29.52, so I can only assume that they would be a decent amount higher if they had Smith.
Yeah, I think you take one step backwards with the hopes of taking 2 steps forwards, and I think that's what the move was, so I'm okay with it.
Here's where I don't, and I know we're obviously running long, and I can't help this. I don't know if that's the strategy in the NFL. With such a short shelf life on everything that's basically not the Patriots, I feel like you have to maximize every window that you have because the whole landscape of the league can change in a year. There's so much turnover and so many changes every single year. It's so variable from a season to season basis that I don't think that I would ever want to take that step back in this case. I mean, I also probably wouldn't have drafted Mahomes last year, so they obviously have a plan that they're enacting. This was clearly a goal that's been in place for 2 years. I'm just not sure I'm there.
They would have also had to pay Alex Smith, and I think that's part of it. The Ringer NFL podcast talks a lot about team control for these guys. And if you have the quarterback who's on a rookie deal, it kind of helps you build the rest of the team more effectively around them. So they had to make a choice between either taking like Alex Smith at like a franchise tag caliber contract, or go with Mahomes and hope that he does spark the offense. And then maybe you have a little bit of a learning curve, but you get him cheap and you can build a team around him. So I think from a team building perspective, I get what they're doing. And I just think Mahomes is more upside, even though Smith is definitely more accurate and almost definitely a better player right now.
Yeah, I get it. It's an interesting roll of the dice. You're betting a lot on Andy Reid there.
Yeah, I believe in the guy, but whatever. We'll see how Mahomes does. We'll definitely be talking more about him in the coming weeks, especially as we get closer to the price discussions and all the DFS talk. Los Angeles Chargers, relevant wide receivers are Keenan Allen, who has plus 1,200 odds to lead the NFL in receiving, Terrell Williams, Mike Williams, and Travis Benjamin. Keenan Allen, obviously, his reputation is getting hurt a lot, but he had his first 16-game season in a while in 2017, and he was, to me, the most underrated wide receiver in football. Caught 64.2% of his passes while receiving 27.3% of the Chargers targets. And his 9.3 air yards per target shows that he was more than just a dink and dunk player like the Jarvis Landrys of the world, and even Golden Tates, for being honest. Allen also got 1.5 red zone targets per game. He only converted about 0.7 of them, which could increase given his effectiveness elsewhere on the field. He's not a traditional big body, but he's getting almost 10 targets a game and an offense who's going to be in more games than they are not going to be in. So I love Allen. Terrell Williams is more of a deep ball threat. 14.3 air yards per target, not many red zone targets. Mike Williams gets a lot of hype, but he was actually pretty terrible last year, just a 48% cap rate. And Travis Benjamin, too, I think will have useful days. 16.3 air yards per target, and obviously can break plays open with his yards after the catch skills. But to me, this is a one-receiver team. It's Keenan Allen. You can maybe have, I think, Terrell Williams in the mix for your wide receiver 3 slot for season long, but it's Keenan Allen's show. I'm buying Keenan Allen, and I guess the whole group by proxy.
Yeah, I'm absolutely buying Keenan Allen. Top 10 wide receiver easily, in my opinion. I really like Terrell Williams, though. I think he graded out really well, nicely last year, rather. And he was efficient, and that's what matters to me when I'm evaluating football. I love Rivers. He's been exceptional for, 15 years?
14
yes. Years?
I think that's about right.
So, big Rivers believer. I'm nervous about the Henry injury, though. I want to see how that impacts the wide receiving core.
Yeah, it's not great that having a tight end hole, and I don't even know who's that tight end for them now because they didn't bring back Gates yet.
Virgil Green.
Oh, okay. He's okay, I think. I don't have his numbers in front of me right now, but could be a non-terrible pick. I think Allen, though, is definitely the guy because he's just going to get the targets regardless of whether the offense is kind of sticky or not. So Allen to me is there. And I guess, yeah, you're right about Williams. He did catch 63% of his balls, and that's pretty good for a guy who's a deep ball threat. So, yeah, sure. If you want to buy Williams, I guess I could be a little more talked into it there first look.
15th in DVOA last year.
Williams was?
Yeah.
Wow. All right. There. Again, another case. Good underneath guy, and the over-the-top guy can just do more things. Just a little fun thing to keep in mind, guys, when you're building your teams.
I think we just figured something out because this is a team that has those two things plus a competent quarterback. Yeah,
that is a thread, which, I mean, it makes sense, obviously, given the reasons that we talked about. I mean, like you talked about with Madden, the dagger routes, the whole thing. But yeah, I think that there is a noteworthy degree of skill for these guys going over the top, even if or success rather, if these guys going over the top, even if they don't seem that great. Josh Gordon, MVP this year. That's the main takeaway.
Come on now. Most valuable pot smoker?
He is to me. I mean, I think that would be me or you, but he's a close second, I would say.
Yeah, I'd like to win, but I think Willie Nelson has had that crown for years and years.
He's not relevant anymore.
Snoop
still is.
Yeah,
that's probably. Los Angeles Rams, relevant wide receivers are Brandon Cooks, who was plus 8,000 odds to lead the NFL in receiving. Cooper Kupp, plus 10,000 odds to lead the NFL in receiving. Robert Woods, plus 10,000 odds to lead the NFL in receiving. The only group with 3 players available with a chance to win the NFL in receiving in Vegas. Or lead the NFL in receiving in Vegas. So there you go. That's noteworthy. It's a big plus to me for Jared Goff, obviously a guy we talked about earlier, or earlier in the video series. Brandon Cooks was perceived as something as a disappointment in New England last year, but he still got 19.4% of the targets at 15.4 air yards per. Catch rate of 57% wasn't the best, given that it was Tom Brady throwing the balls. And it could be an issue with Jared Goff, obviously a little bit less accurate than Tom Brady. A little might be a bit of a stretch, but definitely less accurate. Cooks should still get his. Cooper Kupp, though, was a big surprise to me. He was second in the NFL with red zone targets per game last year, 1.53. He scored a touchdown on 22% of his red zone catches. He and Robert Woods got a similar amount of targets overall, 94 to 85 for Kupp to Woods, and almost the same catch rate, 66% for Kupp versus 65.9 for Woods. I thought that was really weird. I think they're sort of fungible pieces, but I think Kupp is a more important part of the offense. So I'm buying this team, and I'm also going on a limb a bit. My rankings for the team relative to their value are Kupp first, Cook second, and then Woods a distant third. So I don't know, man. Kupp was a surprise to me, and I think I like him a lot this year.
If you're not buying the Rams wide receivers this year, you can go fuck yourself.
And Todd Gurley, too. I'm buying everybody.
Right. It'd be hard to not buy everything here. Cooks last year, in a year where, he kind of got slept on for some strange reason in New England. He was 13th in DR and 17th in DVOA. Perfectly acceptable. Kupp, 10th and 4th. Amazing. Even, oh my God, even Woods was like a top 20 wide receiver. They are overflowing with offensive talent. How do you slow this team down? What do you do?
They're going to be really good. I mean, defensively, too, they're even better. I think they're a team to beat in the NFC this year, and I don't have any regression. And the volume is just so crazy for all these guys, and they're good, and they get into position to be good. And I don't know. I just love them. I think you could give me this whole team, too. Them and the Chiefs are like, I think I just love everybody involved.
Yeah, I mean, everything's coming up aces here. Unless I'm, man. That's the best wide receiving core in football, right?
Yeah, the best used is what I would say.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I'd say Atlanta probably has more natural talent.
And KC's doesn't look that bad either, and Pittsburgh's I also like a lot. But yeah, I think I just believe in McVay a lot. So yeah, so Jeremy Browning asks, too many mouths to feed for the Rams. The Rams pile on points and abuse people if they can. Yeah. So I think no, and I just think these guys are going to get into spots, and they're all going to have weeks that are great. So yeah.
I mean, in theory, yes. In the aggregate, no. Like on a week-to-week basis, yeah. Like somebody's not going to eat enough, but I think it's all going to come out in the wash.
And when they have matchups that are very winnable, they are going to beat up on people, and I think that's when you stack them up, and then you get really contrarian by having Goff with a Gurley and maybe 2 receivers, maybe 3 receivers. Who fucking knows with this team? They're crazy. They're just a crazy team. Very excited to see them this year. Probably going to go to some games. They are an LA team.
Can't wait till they go 6-10 because that's the NFL for you.
I went to their playoff game last year. And it was a fun environment, except their chant was, "Whose house? Rams house." And then they would do it over and over and over again. Like they were trying to cultivate an identity a little too much, but still, I just love McVay. That's so dreamy.
Well, that's one of the worst chants I've ever heard.
It was an ongoing joke with my friend. We would just text each other "whose house" sometimes for a couple of weeks because it was just like it was really annoying but catchy, very sticky phrase.
Yeah, it was really sticky 35 years ago for Run DMC.
Also that. Maybe it's a hearkening back thing. It's nostalgic. The Miami Dolphins, relevant wide receivers, Kenny Stills, Danny Amendola, and Devontae Parker. Dolphins obviously lost Jarvis Landry and his 26.7% target share, along with 1.44 red zone targets a game. So that's 2 valuable spots that somebody's going to need to fill in. And to me, that made Danny Amendola look really good. He got 8.4 air yards per target last year, so not dissimilar from Landry's 6.4. And he caught balls at a better catch rate with a 71% chance of catching balls. He did have Tom Brady versus whoever the fuck the Dolphins had last year, Matt Moore. I don't even remember who they played at QB. Some asshole, whatever asshole they had, he wasn't as good as Tom Brady. I'm willing to commit to that.
I bet that person didn't kiss his son aggressively.
He probably did not full on French his son on video. He didn't do that. Amendola was less effective in the red zone than Landry, but with the opportunity, he may be good in the role. So Amendola to me is really interesting. His injury history too would make me a bit curious about new signing Albert Wilson, who comes from Kansas City, where his role was also a bit dink and dunky. So I think one of those guys is going to figure it out this year and get some of Landry's role in the offense. It's a new coordinator with Dewell Lawgames, who we've talked about before. Rated the worst play caller in the NFL by all his peers. That's not something to shine with. But still, I think that if he does keep that philosophy, and they kind of kept the same head coach, the offensive coordinator ended up becoming the director of player personnel. So there is reason to believe that they will try to keep that short throw approach available. And I think that would benefit Amendola. Kenny Stills, I don't know. He's boomer bust to me. He'll catch deep balls. He'll drop them. He also had a shit ton of fumbles last year. Devontae Parker should be better. I think he also has a decent chance to take the red zone targets that were Landry's because he's a big body. You can get up there. So a little interesting to me, but still, I would probably go a hold here, teetering on a sell. But I just think the Amendola Landry thing seems really interesting to me. So that's why I'm holding.
Yeah, I don't have much interest in Amendola anymore. How old is he?
55.
I mean, he might
30,
be.
33 probably. He's been around for a while. So 33 probably would be my guess.
32.
All right. Good guess by me.
Yeah. I think Parker's trash. Wilson had a really good year for Kansas City last year. I'm anxious to see if that holds up with someone like Ryan Tannehill compared to someone as good as getting them the ball as Alex Smith. Stills is Stills. I mean, you know what you're getting out of him at this point, but I don't think Parker can shoulder the load. This is another team where I think like everybody's bumped up a notch higher than they should be on the depth chart, and I'm not the biggest Ryan Tannehill fan coming back off of a major injury. It's not like Brock Osweiler or Bryce Petty are going to get shit done just in case Tannehill goes out. So I'm selling the Dolphins wide receiver core. Are there opportunities there? Sure. Are they going to be throwing the ball a lot because they suck? Yes. They're more streamable in like a DFS perspective than they are viable for me in like a season-long scenario.
Yeah, I would take a flyer, I think, on Amendola in a season-long situation. I agree. That's sort of where I view them as like they're a super contrarian team, I think, in DFS who might have some usefulness, and people will be like, oh, the Dolphins suck. And I think that there's a chance that they could get some of that. So that's sort of how I view them. So I think we're not far off there. Sure. Minnesota Vikings relevant wide receivers are Adam Thielen, who has plus 1,800 odds to lead the NFL in receiving, and Stephon Diggs, who has plus 6,000 odds to lead the NFL receiving. And they also brought on board Kendall Wright, who was actually really good for the Bears last year. So it's an interesting wide receiver group here. Diggs and Thielen are pretty much even. Thielen gets more targets, but it's sort of hard to say. He had a rapport with Keenum that Diggs didn't initially. And there were news stories about how Thielen was staying after practice and working with Keenum every day. So I think I know you might be able to speak to this more with Kirk Cousins. I think Cousins spreads the ball around more. And I think all things being agnostic, I would actually like Diggs more than Thielen. I'm not sure if Thielen's targets were sort of a symptom of the offense or just Keenum's preference. And I think Diggs is more explosive. He does really good things with getting the ball and saving quarterbacks from interceptions. So I like Diggs a lot. I like Thielen. And Kendall Wright deserves a mention here, too. He got 91 targets in Chicago last year and caught 65% of them. And that's coming from Mitch Trubisky. So I think that's interesting to note. Wright, also more of an underneath receiver, 7.9 air yards per target. So that's more of a complementary role for Thielen and Diggs. I think they can all have usefulness. I think I would still go Diggs over Thielen, even though Thielen has the better receiver odds in Vegas. But I'm buying the whole group.
Yeah, I'm oddly a fan of the Vikings here, even though I don't want to be. But I like my boy Kirk. What can I say? I wish he was still a quarterback of the Redskins. So here are your stats on Diggs and Thielen. Diggs in DER, 9th overall, 5th in DVOA. Thielen, 11th in DER. Not a big gap between him and Diggs, just one spot. Cooper Kupp, oddly enough. But Thielen, 26th in DVOA. A lot of volume there, not the best efficiency. I prefer Diggs just as like I think he's a better wide receiver. From a fantasy perspective, it might be Thielen just from a volume Diggs a little bit more. Error bars are a little bit bigger. Things break well for him. You know, he could roll up a ton of touchdowns, but he could also could be one of those like Calvin Johnson scenarios where he gets tackled on the one like 4 times in a season.
Yeah,
it used to happen that was all the time too.
That was one thing I noticed too with Thielen. Thielen only turned 12% of his red zone touches into TDs. Diggs turned 54% of his, and they were pretty comparable in targets. Thielen got more and was less effective with them. So I think Diggs deserves a bigger role than Thielen. I think is how I feel about it. I think we're on the same page with that.
Yeah, I like Kendall Wright a lot. I think he's a really nice third option here. Diggs and Thielen both drew over 100 yards in defensive pass interference.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, look, that offense, we talked about it. They weren't my Super Bowl pick early on. I don't know if that's going to stay throughout this process, but I just like the offense a lot. And I think these guys are in a good spot. And I think we're both on the same page too, that there's a little more value in Diggs if he does take Thielen's role. And I think people are paying a premium right now for Thielen, assuming it's all going to be equal. And I just think the talent's not there for him quite as much as it is for Diggs.
Second best odds in the NFC to make the Super Bowl.
Interesting. Oh, okay. So there you go. Vegas believes in my belief. That's all that matters.
Eagles at clear 1. Vikings and Rams are essentially tied at second.
Andrew Mott. Zay Jones, number 1 wide receiver. Sorry, Andrew. We already talked about Zay Jones, but we are not big Zay Jones guys. Josh is more so though.
I'm a Zay Jones fan off the field.
He is a ECU pirate of butts and everything, I'm sure.
Anybody that's going to show up naked in a hotel hallway is all right with me.
New England Patriots relevant wide receivers are Chris Hogan, Julian Edelman, Cordero Patterson, Kenny Britt, and new signing Eric Decker. After releasing Jordan Matthews this week and signing Decker, their wide receiver group seems like even more of a clusterfuck than it would have been otherwise. So fun for the Patriots. They love making it easy on us. Julian Edelman's going to miss the first 4 games of the year due to a PED suspension. The guy who I really trust out of the group is Chris Hogan. With all of the guys in the core last year who were available, Chris Hogan still had just 10.1% of the balls thrown his way, but he got 13.2 air yards per target, and he was 5th in the league in red zone targets with 1.43 per game. So Cooks and Amendola leaving free up 200 targets from Brady. Hogan is the only guy who's been a part of the group before. I think Hogan is going to have some use this year, and I like him a lot as being a guy who can maybe take a big jump depending upon how much Brady uses him. I also thought Cordero Patterson was pretty interesting. I don't know about you, Josh, but I would have thought Cordero Patterson was a deep ball guy still. He actually was more of a slot guy. He caught 74% of his targets last year at 6.1 air yards per target. So he was more working the underneath route, which is not what Hogan does, and it is what Amendola and Edelman, who's out, does. So I think Patterson may actually have some use. If he's getting the snaps, I think he may actually have more use than it seems, and maybe like a surprise play that first week or two. So I'm interested in this group. It's still the Patriots. You can't predict anything, but I don't know. Like Patterson could be used more effectively than he ever has been before, and they may need to use him. And I think he and Hogan both are interesting, like guys who don't get the love they probably should.
This is a tough team to evaluate because it's the Patriots. Like every one of these guys are going to catch 2 balls. And Brady's going to complete 30 passes to 25 guys. You know, it's hard to, like, I love Big Dick Decker because I get to call him Big Dick Decker, but I don't think he's like a particularly good wide receiver any longer. Hogan's fine. You know, I hope Edelman can get back on the gas when he gets done this suspension because I have a feeling he's going to need it. I mean, he's like 1 concussion away from being brain dead at this point. Look, do you really, like, is it really a bet on the Patriots wide receivers, or is it just a bet on Brady? Does it really matter?
No, I mean, I think it doesn't.
If you picked 5 random names to be the Patriots wide receivers, would anything change?
I think looking at the style of play, like sort of like we talked about, I think does change it. Like I think Patterson could be a good complement and could get more targets just because he might be the safety valve guy, even though it's not what you would think. But like that to me is interesting because that's a guy who Brady would use more than I would have thought initially, where I just figured he would do like the Malcolm Mitchell role, just run straight down the sideline, maybe Brady will throw it to you. So if he's getting like touches in space, I like him a lot. Like I think that could be the most dynamic version of Amendola that ever existed. And I think that's noteworthy.
Yeah, I mean, we've been waiting for Patterson to be good for 5+ years now. You're talking to me like you're Al Davis, just betting on incredible athletes.
74% of his targets, though, he caught last year. Like, that's crazy. Like, I wouldn't think that's Cordero Patterson, and that is him. And I think that might be why the Patriots are the smartest team in the league. Like, they might have seen that just like I saw, and we're like, ooh, okay. I don't know. That's
did you just compare yourself to the Patriots in terms of like football knowledge? Is that what we're doing here?
I think we both unearthed similar things.
Maybe they noticed what I noticed. Maybe that's what we're thinking now. You unearthed whatever the Patriots brain trust is going to be landing on. That's some rich shit right there.
Corey Volk, big fan of Edelman's ADP value. Yeah, missing 4 games will do that. This is something we might have mentioned in a previous video. I don't remember. I don't like Julian Edelman as a human being because he hooked up with a girl who I was briefly in love with after we had stopped hanging out. And then while she blew him under some duress in which she just kind of felt like she had to. And he called her coach the entire time. Like he just calls every girl coach, and he'll be like, "Oh yeah, like you're sucking my dick, coach," or like, "Hey, coach, you want some food?" Like that's what he calls everybody. So he's weird.
Get this hard hitting action on any other podcast, folks. Also, Cody Leach, how is TY not a number 1? I'm probably underselling him if Luck is healthy.
Yes, I would agree with that. Let's see, who's this guy? Oh, G Power asking about Quincy Enunwa. We're going to get to him in a little bit. We're going in alphabetical order, but he will be in our Jets discussion. New Orleans Saints. Corey Volk noted. Yeah, these are the reasons not to go with Edelman because he says coach during the sex thing. New Orleans Saints. Michael Thomas plus 1,500 odds to lead the NFL in receiving. Ted Ginn also part of the mix. Cam Meredith and Austin Carr came over from New England, and he and Cam Meredith are expected to compete for the slot role. Drew Brees, as we mentioned before, tops in the league with a 72% completion rate. He was doing that mostly by not going deep quite as much, but still, he is Drew Brees. He will air it out from time to time. Michael Thomas was the main beneficiary, 27.8% target share last year, and he caught almost 70% of the balls thrown his way. The run game reliance is probably going to hamper him a bit, but Thomas picked up only 1 red zone target per game, which is surprising given his ability there. He turns red zone touches into touchdowns at 31% of the time, which is really good. I think you're always going to run into the issues with the running game. The Saints are officially a running team, as we saw last year, and I think that worries me a little bit about Thomas, but I still think Thomas is good enough, and an implied probability of 6.3% to lead the NFL in receiving yards is very good for him. Ted Ginn, it's worth noting, was the best version of himself last year. He caught, which I was blown away by, 75.7% of his targets, and that's at 12.1 air yards per pass. So Ted Ginn, known alligator arm motherfucker who can't catch a ball, caught 76% of his balls at depth. That is crazy to me. So that was something I wasn't aware of. I think he can be valuable in season long and DFS. Again, same run game issues. Austin Carr and Cam Meredith competing with rookie Traquan Smith for the number 3 role. Something to watch. Cam Meredith showed some flashes when he was in Chicago 2 years ago before missing last year with a knee injury. They seem to want Traquan Smith to win the job. I think it could go either way. I think you're still mostly looking at Thomas. I think you can look a little like Ginn and the wide receiver 3 role. It'll probably have usefulness some weeks, but not a guy you want to bank on. But buying the group and buying Michael Thomas big time, like Jerm right now in the chat is saying.
Yeah, completely agree. And having Drew Brees as your quarterback will help. Having Kamara in the backfield will help. But here's Michael Thomas in 2016. 2nd in DER, 3rd in DVOA. Last year, 5th in DER, 16th in DVOA. A little bit of a step back, but still. I mean, this is a guy that's a top 10 overall wide receiver in football. And I feel like doesn't get talked about like he should. He's been exceptional for a while now. Ginn, oddly enough, incredible year. He was 2nd in DVOA last year. Ted Ginn. Holy shit. After all of the time that he's been in the NFL. In this ridiculous career and being overdrafted by the Dolphins, right? Got drafted by the Dolphins?
Yeah, Dolphins.
8th, 9th, something like that. Now here he is, just being like a linchpin on an offense. I did not see that shit coming, man. Yet here we are. Cam Meredith, I think, is a perfectly acceptable number 3 here. I'm completely buying this Saints offense and completely buying this wide receiver core. Love Michael Thomas.
Yeah. I like when we're both surprised by a guy. Like, I feel like it's happened a few times here, and Ginn definitely, to me, was one of the bigger surprises of the day. 76% for Ted Ginn. Like, that's who fucking knew? Who knew? We'll know this year though, because we're paying much closer attention.
I always call him T Gin. a buddy of mine was talking to like a guy at work years ago about like having a fantasy draft, and he was like reading off who he had, and he was like, I got this T Jin guy. He was like, T Jin, who the fuck is this guy talking about? Like, oh, Ted Ginn? He's like, yeah, I guess.
Sounds like a shitty rapper, T-Jin. Like T-Pain's like bootleg fucking RC Cola counterpart.
Yeah.
New York Giants, relevant wide receivers, Odell Beckham, who is plus 1,000 to lead the NFL in receiving, Sterling Shepard, Cody Latimer. New coach Pat Shurmur comes from the much discussed before Minnesota Vikings offense. A lot of the same philosophies that he had and North Turner share will be brought over to the Giants, or expect to be brought over to the Giants. His offense tends to emphasize low-risk throws into space, designed to give players a chance to make plays. You know who that would benefit would be Mr. Odell Beckham, who is currently a 9.1% implied probability to lead the NFL in receiving. He was only on the field for a few games last year, but in that limited time, he racked up 10.3 targets per game, which would be good for third in the league. A lot depends on Eli Manning. Can he be Case Keenum? I think he can. Sterling Shepard did a good job without Beckham as well. Targeted 7.6 times per game and grabbed 70% of them, despite being the Giants' only weapon at receiver last year. Obviously, Evan Ingram at tight end was good, but Shepard getting a lot of the attention, did a good job with it. I think both those guys look good. Cody Latimer is a signing that I don't really see much with. 61% catch rate and 10 air yards. Maybe we'll give him some limited value, but I like Odell a lot. I like Shepard less than I would have last year, obviously, because Odell's going to take a lot of targets away from him. But Odell, I would buy big time. I think he's going to get the ball in space, and Odell in space can break touchdowns over and over and over again. So I love Odell.
I'm holding, I guess, with a more of a lean towards a sell, because I'm not a huge Eli Manning guy any longer. Beckham wasn't great last year. 3.5% DVOA. That's troublesome, before going out. I'm not a big Shepard fan. Yeah, I can. The best I could do is hold, like, if Beckham is Beckham, he can transform that offense, and Barkley is obviously a weapon that should be game-changing for the Giants. I just don't know if Eli Manning still has the gas in his arm.
I think that offense is going to ask him to have a ton of gas, because, like, from what I've seen about the QB breakdowns with Keenum wasn't throwing into tight spaces effectively. He wasn't doing any of that stuff. And granted, I don't think Shepard is Diggs, but I think Beckham is better than Thielen, and I think that's sort of where I would go with it. I don't think he's going to be bailed out as much by his receivers as Keenum was, but if he's making effective kind of open space throws, and Keenum was a 67% passer last year, let's say Eli can get to 63 or something like that, I think that's a lot of opportunity in front of these guys, and especially in front of Odell. I just like Odell a lot. He's so good at breaking passes, and I think he's going to get a lot of shots to do that.
Look, the volume's going to be there if he's on the field. He's electric. I'm nervous about that quarterback situation. Cody Leach, okay. Just to touch on it. Like, obviously, Alex Smith had a much better season last year than he had previously, but he was coming off an 11-4 year. A Pro Bowl nod isn't necessarily something that matters all that much. If you stay on the field, you can make the Pro Bowl just because everyone makes a Pro Bowl nowadays. But, I mean, he was coming off 2 back-to-back 11-win seasons as a starter. It's not as if, like, he was garbage and then had this outlier year. He had an outlier statistical year last year, but he was still the quarterback of, like, a very good Kansas City team. So that's scary. You don't see a lot of teams making that move. Like, look at the Ravens right now with Lamar Jackson. They're like, it's a lot easier to replace Flacco, in my opinion. I guess maybe not just because of his like cachet with Baltimore and having a Super Bowl ring, but you don't see a lot of teams just like making that move while they're winning. That's a rare thing.
I think we talked about it before, but I think that's just the new NFL. It's how you make the salary cap work for you, and they had to take a bite the bullet now or do it in 3 years and end up in a much worse cap space situation. So whatever.
Look, I'm not saying I have an issue with that sort of logic. I'm just saying like that is a very new move for the NFL.
That's just how me and the Patriots and the Chiefs run teams. We're all on the same page philosophically.
I don't know. I mean, that'd be like the Patriots getting rid of Brady to keep handsome Jimmy G. They didn't.
Which you could argue they could have and maybe should have done.
Sure. Like what the Chiefs did was rare. We'll see how it works out.
New York Jets, relevant wide receivers are Robbie Anderson, is plus 8,000 to lead the NFL in receiving. Quincy Enunwa, by popular request in the chat from G Power. Jermaine Kearse and Terrell Pryor all in the group. Josh McCown's expected to start the year at QB, with Sam Darnold probably taking over the role at some point in the year. And McCown actually was pretty good last year. He's fifth in the league in accuracy, completed 67.3% of his passes. Robbie Anderson had a 22.4% target share and converted them as well as you would hope from him. 13 air yards per target and a 55.3% catch rate. Quincy Enunwa missed 2017 with a neck injury, but he had some real flashes in 2016 with 857 yards. He's been banged up already this preseason, so that kind of worries me a little bit. But his presence in the receiving group would definitely help create more space and likely take some value away from the other guys who aren't Robbie Anderson. If Enunwa does seize the role and stays healthy, Jermaine Kearse seems like the guy most likely to get squeezed. And Terrell Pryor, I could also see maybe not getting a ton of love, but stealing enough from those guys. So like the wide receiver 3 group and down, I'm not crazy about. I think there's a lot of targets they're going to have to share there. Kearse had a 20% target share last year, so that would be basically what they're divvying up. Kearse was the best catching passes, or at least better than Pryor in 2017, and that may be enough to keep Pryor at bay. But overall, I think you got to watch this battle for number 2 and 3 in New York. I'm still okay with Robbie Anderson. I think he's fine. He's going to get deep balls thrown his way regardless of who's there. I think maybe a little bit less bullish on him if Sam Darnold starts, but maybe not, because Darnold is kind of a reckless thrower. So still a sell for me, I think, overall, but I don't mind Robbie Anderson, and I could see talking myself into Enunwa or Jermaine Kearse, depending upon who takes that number 2 role.
Just to answer Cody, I appreciate the interactions, man. Always like people talking in the chat. It's fun. Look, I don't expect to be right on most of this stuff. NFL is the most variant sport to analyze, in my opinion. It's a lot easier to talk about the future of the NBA or future of baseball. So, you know, a lot of this is so matchup dependent and coaching dependent. Yeah, we'll see how it shakes out on the field. For the Jets, it's a hard sell. Not a big Robbie Anderson fan. He doesn't belong in a number 1 wide receiver conversation. I don't see anything good here. Pryor was a train wreck for the Redskins last year, barely on the field. What good could possibly happen here?
They were sneakily valuable last year. I do remember them having some DFS value in particular with McCown and some of the and Kearse. I remember being valuable parts of winning lineups. So I think in that perspective, I think they may have some usefulness. And I like Robbie Anderson last year. I think I had him on my season-long team. I don't mind him. I don't mind these guys, but I'm not. We've talked about so many teams where we're like, yes, those guys are fucking great. Like, I don't feel that way about anybody on the Jets.
No, not at all. Look, they're going to be valuable in a DFS standpoint on a week-to-week basis because all these guys are going to have low salaries.
Yes, that is also true.
So it makes for an easy stack to get Josh McCown, Robbie Anderson, and Jordan Leggett or something stupid because they play, I don't know, another shit team and they're cheap. Like, that's how that ends up happening. I don't think there's any viable fantasy players on this entire squad.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. We'll try to speed this up so we can maybe get done by 1. Maybe, who knows? Oakland Raiders, relevant wide receivers, Amari Cooper, plus 3,300 to lead the NFL in receiving. Martavis Bryant and new signing Jordy Nelson. I mean, both of them are new signings. All part of the group. Amari Cooper was something of a disappointment last year, but it wasn't because of opportunity. His 6.9 targets per game would have put him right in line with guys who actually exceeded their expectations, like Devin Funchess, Marquise Lee, and Stephon Diggs. Cooper caught only 50% of the balls thrown his way. That's really bad. It's got to be better, though. It's got to be better for him this year. Michael Crabtree leaves behind 101 targets. Cooper should be the guy who gets the most of them. It's a make-or-break year. I think even with Gruden committed to the run, he's going to get Cooper involved. So I actually do like Cooper. I think he can turn it around. Martavis Bryant continued to be a competent deep threat despite a pretty tumultuous year in Pittsburgh. He caught 60% of his targets at 14.5 air yards per. We got to imagine he's going to come out with a chip on his shoulder, which not a data point, but Martavis Bryant does seem like a spiteful human being. So I do like him. I think he's also going to get a lot of wide open touchdown grabs this year, just by being on the field, getting all those chances to run routes. Jordy Nelson stinks. I think he's just washed up. 60% catch rate was okay last year, but I don't think he creates space, and that's more of a watching him last year thing. I don't think he can get open anymore. So yeah, I like Cooper. I like Bryant. don't like Jordy. So I guess overall this unit is a buy for me, but not Jordy.
Yeah, I'm selling here. I'm not hanging with Mr. Cooper. There's a joke that no one in this chat's probably going to get. I do like Jordy Nelson, but I don't expect anything crazy there. Is Martavis Bryant the best wide receiver on this team? Because he might be.
Cooper had a better year in 2016, so I don't think he's as bad as he was last year. I just don't get why he was so bad last year. It didn't seem like there was a logical reason why.
Cooper was 68th out of 86 qualified wide receivers in DR. He was also 68th in DVOA out of that same number. Yikes. I mean, he needs to have a dramatic change in outlook. And, I don't necessarily think that John Gruden's going to be the answer to what the problem is. I'm not entirely confident that he's a genius outside of knowing how to make money. Seems to be a better businessman than he is football coach, in my opinion.
A better run game, if that is the thing to commit to, is obviously going to clear it up a little bit for Cooper. And, maybe just having Crabtree not in the way, I think some guys just need to be the focus. Corey Lokey's still Cooper's going too high in drafts and probably too expensive in DFS. I would agree with that. I think his value right now is a little too high for where he is, but I think he has a decent chance about backing out that value just because he's going to get the volume. I probably would take Bryant over him, though, from a DFS and a season-long perspective.
Believe in Chucky. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pass.
All right, so we're sort of split on that one. I'm a hold, but it's not a great hold.
I don't think he's going to become Dick Vermeil in this case.
We'll find out. We'll find out soon. I think they're a team that has a lot of a variety of outcomes, but I wouldn't be surprised if just the cult of personality does make them better than they should be by all rights. Yeah. So, honestly, some similarities between John Gruden and CM Punk. They both walked away. Both still have a ton of value. People wanted them back and added from a job that they weren't as good at, or at least perceived to be good at. CM Punk, John Gruden now. You're not getting those anywhere else.
That's a really good one, actually. The weird part is, though, if Punk came back, he'd be incredible.
Oh, yeah. So maybe John Gruden will, too. We'll find out. I'm excited to find out.
I don't think Gruden was incredible when he left. That's the problem.
He won a Super Bowl. That's enough to be perceived as incredible.
I don't remember what his... You keep going. I don't remember what his record was when he left.
We're on to the Philadelphia Eagles. Josh will look that up while I do that. Relevant wide receivers are Alshon Jeffrey, who is plus 8,000 to lead the NFL in receiving. Nelson Aguilar and new signing Mike Wallace, who will be a better version of Torrey Smith in this offense. Last year, Nelson Aguilar was really the only guy who caught balls at a respectable rate on the team. He pulled down 65% of his targets, and the Eagles rewarded him with the most red zone targets on the team. He actually got the ball thrown his way in the red zone 1.13 times per game. Aguilar is more of a mid-range guy, works the mid-range more than Jeffrey and Wallace will. Aguilar got 10.4 air yards per target, whereas Jeffrey got 14. And Jeffrey got a 21% target share, which is good, but his catch rate of 48% or 47.5% was really fucking bad. So I think Jeffrey will be better this year after a full offseason with his team. I think he joined the Eagles late last year. I think Wallace is going to be better.
Where's Wallace? Way to boy string. Sorry.
Hopefully a better outcome for Mike Wallace than Michael B. Jordan in The Wire.
Yeah, for sure.
Wallace should get less targets than he got in Baltimore last year. But again, I think he's a better version of Torrey Smith. So I'm going to buy this group, but more so Aguilar and Wallace than Jeffrey. Jeffrey should be better, but that catch rate's really fucking bad. So, still a buy, but not as great of a buy.
Yeah, I'm buying the team, so I'm sort of like buying them by proxy. I love Nelson Aguilar. I liked him a lot in NCAA football while he was still at USC. Mike Wallace has been around a bit, but as a third wide receiver, I think that he brings a lot to the game. Jeffrey was rough last year, from a statistical standpoint, but I think that all of the weapons, along with Wentz, will create a decent receiving environment. He might not be what they want him to be, but he'll be enough.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how I feel about him too. The other guys to me, like Aguilar actually looked surprisingly very good to me. Jeffrey surprisingly bad, but still good enough because Wentz is going to throw the ball, and that offense demands that he throw the ball. And fuck, if you catch half your passes, but you're still getting 100 targets a game or 100 targets a year, who cares? Or 120. Like, doesn't matter.
Yeah, Mike Wallace, speed, that's it, from Jerem in the chat. I totally agree, but now that's being applied as the third best wide receiver on a squad plus Zach Ertz, instead of being like what needs to be the main option as basically only a straight line threat. Now I think that he has a better chance to use it with all the weapons around him.
And he just has to be better than Torrey Smith, who, I mean, any Eagles fan will, I'm sure, remember painfully all the just drop balls that Torrey Smith had wide open down the field. And if Mike Wallace can catch those at a better rate, which I think he will than he did in Baltimore, I think he could be a very good value.
Torrey Smith, 76th of 86th in DVOA last year. So,
he was so.
That'll be
he did
fun.
not pass the eyes. Pittsburgh Steelers, relevant wide receivers, Antonio Brown, plus 255 to lead the NFL in receiving. Juju Smith-Schuster also getting some odds, plus 6,600 to lead the NFL in receiving. They have a new offensive coordinator we talked about in the previous parts. They promoted QB coach Randy Fichtner. Last time he was a coordinator, he was more of a spread offense guy. Reports so far in camp, he's going to bring more no huddle and pace to the offense, something that's only going to help these wide receivers. Actually, in the link in the article when that goes live, there's a link to Peter King's column about Antonio Brown, the story in there that I thought was pretty good, and how he works basically on the offseason where he'll have the jugs machine. He'll have players come by and jump on him while he's working the jugs machine. Like, he is busting his ass right now in camp. He's hurt right now. I guess he had to go home for an injury. But Brown just putting in the work you'd want to see of a guy who's the best wide receiver prospect on the board. He has a 27.6% target share. His MVP odds represent a 28% implied probability of leading the league in receiving. So that's as good as it gets. Brown gets targeted pretty deep still. He still gets red zone targets, 1.43 a game. The only guy to talk about here besides him is Juju, who was fucking fantastic last year. Another proud wide receiver from USC. Converted 13.4% of his target share into a 73.4% catch rate and 7 touchdowns. Martavis Bryant leaving is going to open up more targets for him. Love Juju. Love Antonio Brown, obviously. This is another huge buy for me. Definitely one of my top 5 buys of the day.
How many orgies is Antonio Brown in? If people are just jumping on him while he's working over the jugs.
Yeah, I mean, he can't help it. People want to get on him when he's playing with some jugs.
Yeah. Look, if people want to jump on top of me while I'm working over the jugs, ask my wife. Antonio Brown, number 1 in DER last year. Surprise, surprise. 11th still in DVOA. That's going to happen when you are the focal point. Juju Smith-Schuster, 6th in DER. Number 1 in DVOA. What a combo, folks.
Wow.
What a combo. As long as Le'Veon Bell decides to play football this year, no reason why I'm not buying the Steelers' offense. If Le'Veon Bell's not there, it really changes the scope of the offense. I don't know if Brown can do it all.
I do think if Le'Veon Bell's not there, I actually think it'd be a better opportunity for Brown and Smith-Schuster, just because they're going to have to do something there. And James Conner at running back is not a dude who he doesn't catch passes. Anybody else they have on the roster doesn't catch passes. So I, in some respect, actually could see the receivers being better for Bell not being there. But yeah, I mean, Bell being there certainly opens up the offense more. So I don't think it hurts them to have Bell there, but I actually think they would be a little better off without him.
I disagree a lot there, and it's mostly because of Roethlisberger. He is not functionally the same person that he used to be. And without Bell in the backfield as sort of this safety valve respect guy, I think that they're going to be able to put a little bit more heat on Roethlisberger, and I don't know if he could hold up under that. I think he needs Bell as sort of his safety blanket to save him from just getting eviscerated constantly.
Okay, you know what? I think that explanation makes sense, and yeah, I could see that. I think, to me, I'm just thinking more of a volume perspective. I think they would have to throw to those guys even more then. But yeah, I think your perspective is fair too. You want to have Bell there. You want to have that team in full strength. Either way, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's going to be like, oh, they'll probably be better without Bell. I know you don't actually better from a
they'll just get more. They'll just get more love.
Yeah, we're on the same page then, I think.
On to the 49ers. The relevant wide receivers are Pierre Garçon. These are our final 5 teams, so we're on the home stretch. Pierre Garçon is plus 8,000 to lead the NFL in receiving. They also have Marquise Goodwin and Trent Taylor in that wide receiving group. Jimmy Garoppolo completed 67.4% of his passes, which was 4th in the league. No reason to expect them to backslide here, especially because the Niners have theoretically improved their offensive line and backfield this year. Garcon was solid, but really not spectacular in any way. He was really just a vessel for Garoppolo's effectiveness with his 8.4 targets per game. He only caught the ball 60% of the time. Marquise Goodwin was actually really good last year, 14.7 air yards per target on 6.6 targets a game. He needs to catch more than 53%, but he's a downfield threat. It's not a fantastic team, and I think you're just banking on him getting a little bit of a look in that offense. Trent Taylor was the best in terms of being a safety valve. 72% catch rate at 7.1 air yards per target. So again, a guy who works underneath with some effectiveness. I think that's interesting to note. One last point about all these guys: Pierre Garcon, 0 red zone touchdowns last year. Goodwin converted his red zone touches to touchdowns 20% of the time. So Garcon, to me, is going to get the volume, so I think he's okay. But he kind of sucks in a lot of the things I would look for. So this is going to be a sell for me, but it's not like I want them to be better than they graded out. And I think they're going to be okay, but I just they should be better. They're not talented enough for what Jimmy deserves.
Yeah, I think we're on the exact same page there. I think Garcon and Goodwin, Taylor, they're all fine. But if Jimmy G is as good as people seem to think he's going to be, or if he's as good as he looks visually, then it might cover some of these warts of Garcon being old as shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's just if Garcon's going to get 8 targets a game, he's going to have a good year. If Trent Taylor's going to get the ball, 8 times a game too, he's going to have a good year. If Goodwin's going to get the ball targeted to him 6 times a game and he's going to get it downfield, he's going to have a good year with Jimmy throwing it. That's all it is to me. But these guys just aren't as good. They just aren't good enough. They should be better.
I think they're a really good DFS offense.
Yes, and I think they could too have weeks where there's 2 guys who are valuable here. Jimmy throws for 4 touchdowns, 2 of them to Taylor, 2 of them, 1 Garcon, 1 to fucking Goodwin. It all seems like it's kind of going that way, but they'll have usefulness, but not guys I think you could bank on particularly. Maybe Garcon if you're okay with shitty guys who get volume.
Moving on.
Seattle Seahawks. We're closing in. Relevant wide receivers: Doug Baldwin plus 3,300 to lead the NFL in receiving. Tyler Lockett, Brandon Marshall is the new signing, as well as Jerron Brown. Doug Baldwin is currently battling a knee injury, so that kind of hurt his odds of winning the receiving title, I think. He was pretty solid last year, 12.7 air yards per target, and a 21% target share, which seems low for a number 1 wide receiver, but that's enough for him to kind of work with. He's not a red zone threat, but he did convert 37.5% of his red zone touches into touchdowns, something which is noteworthy because Jimmy Graham is gone, and he was the most effective and most targeted player in the red zone last year. So that's something where Baldwin could see more. Tyler Lockett posted very comparable numbers to Baldwin, but obviously a smaller target share. He'll have weeks of usefulness, but he needs to get a leap in terms of being targeted if he's going to be useful every week. Brandon Marshall was just bad last year. He caught only 54.5% of his targets. It was a lost season, though. Maybe he'll be back. Jerron Brown, just a straight deep threat, 15.3 air yards per target and a 45% catch rate. So he'll probably do the same thing he did in Arizona, have a couple of weeks where he has monster games, most weeks where he just sucks. Think you got to buy them just because Russell Wilson is the quarterback, and these guys are going to have weeks of usage, but I hate having to predict these guys having the weeks. And Corey Volk, don't talk about Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett's okay. He just needs to get more touches, and I don't think he's going to get them. So a weak buy for me, but still a buy.
Hard sell for me. None of these guys graded out all that well last year, but I think this is the most telling part of it all. 4 teams have worse odds to win the NFC next year: Cardinals, Bucks, Redskins, Bears. Every other team in the NFC has better odds to win the NFC than the Seattle Seahawks. If that's the case, what that's telling me is they don't have enough. And it's not just about the wide receiver core, but just the team in general. I find them underwhelming when I first looked at it. By looking at those odds, that seems to agree. I don't see what they have offensively that I should believe in, unless Rashad Penny becomes the greatest running back in the history of running backs. Oh, Sebastian Janikowski going to carry him on his drunk cigar smoking back? Doubtful.
Russ did a good job. He was the #1 fantasy quarterback last year. He is an elite player. I do worry though about the new coordinator that they have there. Brian Schottenheimer's coming in. He's not shown any competence at all. I don't think he's going to actually make things better. But I think you're just trusting Russell Wilson mostly, and I don't mind putting some hope in Russell Wilson being able to do stuff. But that's surprising that their odds are that low to win the NFC. I don't love that.
Yeah, it's just I have a hard time getting there. I'm now incredibly pessimistic after seeing that.
One last thing to note too: Paul Richardson leaves behind 80 targets, so that is something that could mean Corey Volk, could mean more targets for Tyler Lockett, could also mean more targets wasted on Brandon Marshall or towards Jerome Brown. I think we'll find out pretty fast. I wouldn't be surprised if Brandon Marshall's one of those like, oh, he retired in the preseason because he just fucking was going to get cut kind of players, but we'll find out pretty fast with there. So, all right, not crazy about Seattle. Poor Seattle. Sorry, Pete Carroll. Still love you, buddy. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, relevant wide receivers, Mike Evans, plus 2,000, lead the NFL in receiving. Sean Jackson, Adam Humphries, Chris Godwin. Tampa Bay is going to be without Jameis Winston for the first 3 weeks. He can't keep his hands off of people who don't want to be touched. Not great. Ryan Fitzpatrick will be filling in. Mike Evans was targeted 9 times a game last year, 14 air yards per target, which is a pretty good recipe for him having value. He really is terrible running after the catch, though. Just 1.9 yards per reception after the catch. Not good. Evans was also bad in the red zone. He converted just 15.8% of his red zone catches into a touchdown. To me, it seems like he should be better than that. So maybe there's some regression that could happen there, but it could be a function of the offense or just him not able to execute, him and the quarterback not able to execute on a tight throwing window. Sean Jackson did about what you'd expect of him, 16.1 air yards per target and a 56% catch rate. He's going to be the same boom or bust play, but probably with less boom because he's getting older and a little slower. Adam Humphries here is a safety valve guy, 7.6 air yards per target and a 74% catch rate. More usage for him would make him pretty viable as a PPR option, but we'll see what happens there. He'll be trying to battle with Chris Godwin, who is less of a steady target, 62% catch rate, but he does get deeper down the field, 13.2 air yards per target, and a little better at breaking things. This passing offense was surprisingly pretty good last year. I want to sell, but I don't know. I'm holding on them.
I'm whatever's in between hold and sell. This is a bad Tampa Bay team. Evans was just barely above average last year. Sean Jackson getting a little long in the tooth. Humphries and Godwin aren't going to change things. I don't think Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be the answer while Winston's gone, and I'm not entirely sure that Winston's going to be the answer once he gets back. Bucks, terrible odds to win the NFC. Second worst, I believe. Third worst? Fourth worst? Yeah. Nope. Just slightly ahead of my Washington Redskins, which I can't wait to talk about. Now, what's the upside here? That Winston comes back from his suspension and turns Mike Evans into a guy that he wasn't last year. 52% catch rate. Mike Evans only catching 5 balls is criminal, or catching 5 touchdowns is criminal.
Yeah, again, he's another guy who's volume. To me, he sort of grades out like Garcon, where if he's going to get 136 targets, I think he's still playable, but I don't hold him in the same esteem. I think that's sort of how I viewed it with this process. A lot of guys I thought were good are just getting a ton of targets, and I guess you don't really actualize that until you see all the numbers in front of you. Whereas DeAndre Hopkins, he had a worse catch rate than Mike Evans, or no, actually, well, slightly better still. But I think he can be better. I don't know that Evans can be better. So you're just trusting the volume, and you can do that, but ugh. But ugh, that's the only way I could put it.
He's gonna make somebody really unhappy when they draft him.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Especially those first couple of weeks with Fitzpatrick. I could definitely see him being frustrated and making a lot of sulky gestures. Ugh, stupid Bucks. Should have fired their coach. Tennessee Titans. Relevant wide receivers are Rashard Matthews, Corey Davis, and Tywan Taylor, along with rookie Deontay Burnett. They have a new offensive coordinator, Matt LaFleur, who's coming from the Rams. Assuming he's not a Sean McVay-led mirage, he could actually provide some value to this Titans receiving core. Mariota and Jared Goff posted nearly identical completion rate last year, 62% for Mariota versus 62.1 for Goff. I think you could easily say that Mariota could be a better version of Goff if the offense does come with him. Sort of depends how things shake out with new head coach Mike Vrabel and what the actual brain power of Matt LaFleur is. Matthews had a 17.5%, Rashard Matthews, that is, had a 17.5% target share last year with 11.8 air yards per target. Eric Decker's departure leaves 83 targets up for grabs as well. So I like Matthews. He's injured right now, which kind of worries me. It's an undisclosed injury. Hasn't been on the field in camp, so that's not the best. But assuming he's okay, I think Matthews is in a good spot. Guy who gets a lot of tout love, Corey Davis, dog shit last year. Absolutely dog shit. 52.3% catch rate. I don't see the breakout here. I actually be more inclined to go to Taywan Taylor, who's better as a deep threat, still caught more balls than Davis, 14.5 air yards per target, 57% catch rate. I think, if you're playing this wide receiving core, you're banking on them being the Rams. And I think there's a possibility that they are a poor man's version of that Rams group. So I am going to buy because I think they're going to be cheap, and you can get Rashard Matthews for cheap, and you can get Taywan Taylor or Corey Davis for cheap enough. And I think there's a chance that they are, a fraction of what the Rams guys are. So a buy for me.
I agree with you that they will be a fraction of the Rams guys.
In a good way or a bad way?
It's like 1/90th.
It's still a fraction. It still counts.
86 qualified receivers last year in DR or DVOA. Would you like to tell me where Corey Davis ranked?
Probably at the bottom would be my guess.
85th, one spot ahead of Zay Jones. And the only thing that puts you in the bottom are bath salts.
I like when our numbers match up. Because I haven't, obviously I didn't review Josh's numbers, and I'm just going off straight stats. But I love Football Outsiders, and I'm glad this lines up so well more often than not.
Yeah, Rashard Matthews is fine. Taylor is, these guys are passable. As we mentioned in the running back show, which if you didn't listen to that, check it out. Big fans of Dion Lewis, so I think that will be very helpful for Tennessee. But man, this wide receiving core leaves a bit to be desired. I'm not a fan. Corey Davis really couldn't have been much worse last year. So I guess it can only go up from here.
He was a rookie last year. It's the second year. The biggest jump is usually between second year and rookie year. I think with third year to second year being a close second to that. But so, he can be better. But from what I see on paper, Corey Davis was fucking bad. And it's surprising given how much people who I think are smart are touting him. I don't see it. Also, Cody Leach, just want to point out, I'm amazed, just found out who Spags is. This guy is great. You should watch our live before lock shows every day and not just the morning strategy videos. I guess we have different audiences for both. Who knew?
Yeah, I don't trust Cody's judgment any longer if he thinks you're great.
Oh, come on. I'm the most prepared for football. I am peak ready for football. If you compare me to anybody else out there, this brain is chock full of Patriots quality football knowledge.
It's chock full of something.
Chock full of something. Also, Cody Leach, you're getting your wish. Back to Alex Smith. We are going there. Washington Redskins relevant wide receivers are Jamison Crowder, Paul Richardson, and Josh Doxson. Alex Smith showed excellent touch on the deep ball last year, and his overall accuracy was right in line as well. Third in the league with completion percentage, 67.5%. Jamison Crowder is likely to become an immediate favorite of his. He offers a very check-down friendly 7.1 air yards per target on his 19% target share last year. You would like to see Crowder catch the ball more, only a 64% catch rate, but I think the accuracy bump from Cousins to Smith will help him improve in his third year. Paul Richardson grades out to me like a slightly better Josh Doxson. Richardson last year got 15 air yards per target and caught 55% of them. Doxson got 13.8 air yards per target and 45% of them were in his hands. Both are young players and should improve, but I think to me, Richardson's going to take Dotson's job, and they're so similar that I don't think they're actually going to be on the field together. I guess maybe you could play Crowder out of the slot and those two at left and wide receiver, but I think this is a hold for me, closer to a buy, but really not so into Doxson, more into Richardson and Crowder.
Yeah, look, I don't love Crowder. I like him being on the squad. I don't necessarily think his role fits what he's good at. Doxson had a bit of a lost year in his rookie year, so I think a third-year jump for him is feasible. They invested a big pick in him 2 years ago, or however you want to say that, 3 years ago.
He got that big pick all right.
Yeah. And, you know, I think there's something to be said for missing what amounts to his entire rookie year. I have hopes that he can be good this year. I think that Alex Smith should help him grow because it's not a quarterback that's going to make a lot of mistakes, which I think should help him. And I'm a Paul Richardson fan for what we need him to be. I just think we're missing a little bit here. I like this offense. I like Vernon Davis. I like Jordan Reed. Like, if we're just talking overall, I'm a big Darius Geis fan coming into the year, so I think their offense could be functional. That's it. So I'm just holding here. Crowder needs to take a leap for this to be like a big time thing for the Redskins. What was the offensive rank last year? 14th. I could see them getting there again. You know, their defense was the problem last year. It's not as if their offense was just this major problem.
Yeah, I think they could be better. I mean, the offense, like, I was surprised their passing yard performance last year, and it could be because Kirk Cousins slings it so recklessly too. I mean, but they were just outside the top 10 last year in passing yards per play. So I think, you know, the offense can work, and Smith is more accurate, and I think, you know, they are shaping up to me from now that we're a couple weeks in and done all this review. I think they're closer to like an 8-8 team. You know, with maybe if things break their way, they go 9-7, make the playoffs. Wouldn't surprise me. So.
Oh, surprise me with those goddamn NFC odds. Oh boy, they are shit.
We should do, now that we've done all these parts, I think at the end we should do like an odds thing. We got to figure this out. We got to figure out the rest of the content.
Well, apparently only the Bears and Cardinals are worse than the Redskins in the NFC. So what do I know? It's going to be another great year in Washington D.C.
If you could just bet like on them being better than more teams than that, like I would take that bet. Like I wouldn't bet on them winning the NFC East or winning the NFC or even making the playoffs, but I would bet on them being better than the third worst team in the NFC.
I'm not sure I would.
Ooh, Alex Smith, all this Alex Smith love. You got to trust that quarterback making him better.
Yeah, what if he gets hurt? I don't have a lot of Colt McCoy love.
No, me neither, but we'll find out. All right, that's enough for this chapter 4. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know it's a bit of a weird thing to live stream during today, but we just figured we'd do the same video we would have done for ourselves and posted later live for you guys. So thank you guys in the chat who did participate and take part. If you haven't watched us go live before lock on Fridays, you should do that today. We'll have Osimo himself, Mr. Alex Baker, on. We're talking baseball stuff, so go check that out. More early bird NFL content coming, FL's actual premium special coming for that. So if you want to get on NFL, that'll be coming the next week or two, hopefully. Any parting words, Josh, on the world of wide receivers or whatever's in your beautiful mind?
Yeah, at 1 hour and 57 minutes, I think I've said enough words. See you guys in 2 hours where we go talk for another hour.
Yay! See you guys soon. Thanks for watching.
Bye everybody.